President Obama will meet with the Saudi foreign minister today. This will be his first meeting with the key Arab allies since the Iran nuclear deal was reached earlier this week.
CBS News political director and host of Face the Nation, John Dickerson, joins us from Washington with his take on this. John, thanks for being here. So the president is meeting with the Saudi foreign minister. What do you make of that? This seems like it would be a pretty tough sell.
Well, it depends. They've been talking to the Saudis for a while, and so the president's meeting with Adel al-Jubeir is part of showing that he's still listening, that he's still in touch, that he's not saying sort of take it or leave it. The big question is whether the Saudis, and the Saudis will be asking for things outside of this deal. But the big question really for all of America's allies in the region is whether they see Iran as a greater threat now and therefore need to build up their military, and perhaps even, and this is the most sort of the most dangerous case, is they then go and seek their own nuclear programs. And so this is the president's effort to tend to those allies whose reaction is also a part of the congressional debate.
John, speaking of that congressional debate, the president is facing opposition in Congress about this deal with Iran. What does he need to do to get it approved, and can he, frankly?
Well, what he needs to do is basically get enough Democrats so that he doesn't lose. And that in the Senate means he needs to keep 13 Democrats from going over and joining with the unanimous opposition from Republicans. So that's really the most important thing for him. We've seen the disintegration of the bipartisan foreign policy consensus over a pretty good long while. But this is a pretty stark example of the way in which foreign policy, where you used to have some left-right combinations, you're seeing basically at the moment it's Democrats on one side, Republicans on another. So it'll be interesting to watch that as this debate unfolds.
And John, clearly the president hoping that this deal isn't spiked by Congress, but is he at all worried, is the White House worried how it may seem to our allies? Are they worried about being embarrassed by Congress?
Well, it's I suppose, yes, at some level they don't want to be embarrassed, but more important, what our allies are watching is the extent to which the United States is going to stick with this deal, and what the emerging posture is of the United States in terms of foreign policy. This president will be gone. This deal will exist after him. How is it going to be tended by the next administration? And what does that mean about the security and safety and leadership that those countries in the region can rely on as they make their own choices? And so it's not so much, I mean, it's in part embarrassment about this president, but it's also some signal about the political pressures and how they act on politicians in America and what that might mean for the future of those countries, even after Barack Obama is gone.
John, as you well know, the president has had some major victories on the domestic policy front when it comes to Supreme Court victories on same-sex marriage and also, of course, his health care plan. I wonder, though, in the big scheme of things, how much of this Iran deal and the legacy, part of the president's overall sort of foreign policy legacy? Is this something, in other words, where he feels as though in order to be viewed as a success, this Iran deal is very critical to push it to that notion of a successful presidency?
Well, the president himself talks about this deal in those terms in an interview he gave with Jeffrey Goldberg in The Atlantic. He talked about how he's still going to be alive in 20 years and he'll still have to deal with the fallout from this agreement with Iran. So if it turns out to be a disaster, if this becomes, as critics claim, the new Munich, then he will forever be associated with appeasement of a dangerous foe. On the other hand, if this ends up being a turn in U.S.-Iranian relations for the first time in 35 years, then it will be a huge part of his legacy in a positive sense. So it will be, one way or another, a part of his legacy, but the verdict won't be in for quite some time because unless, of course, Iran tries to cheat in a blatant way very quickly. But it's going to take a while to figure out what exact place this will play in his legacy, but it will play a big role either way.